Hello, I'm Thomas Hunter, and this is a retrospective of a product I built called MapBuddy. MapBuddy was a mobile app available for Android and iOS. Technically, it's currently available, but I'll probably be shutting it down soon. On the screen here, this is sort of an emulator of a device, and so it's not actually running on a mobile device at the moment. At a high level, MapBuddy was intended to be a version of Reddit where every post is associated with a physical geolocation on the Earth. And then so by moving around the planet, you would then see different posts around you. There were sort of two types of posts. We have both beacon posts, which are always visible, and then we would have posts that would only be visible if you were within a certain range. And then so beacon posts would allow one to create classic maps. However, the ones based on geolocation were interesting because you could then create, for example, scavenger hunts, or you could sort of hide things in the physical world. Well, you could hide things, of course, digitally, but in order to find them, you would need to move around in the physical world. So then other than that high overview, I'm going to sort of step through the application and show the different screens off. So upon first install, you are greeted with a tutorial. Sadly, the product was complicated throughout its lifetime. It never achieved product market fit. And so for that reason, it did need a tutorial to explain it. Sort of as I describe it, there isn't really anything like MapBuddy out there. I was able to find a few apps that had similar concept, but nothing quite with as grandiose of ideas as MapBuddy. So here's an example here of one moving physically, where they move from this park here to this road, and upon getting closer to the road, they enter the radius of a message. And so here this message is not visible, and then over here the message is visible. And then these are the beacons, wherein a message is always visible, regardless of a physical location. So this was interesting. You could, again, as I mentioned, build scavenger hunts. You could build Pokemon-like games. You could offer deals to folks who are within a certain physical location. And this application did have paying customers, and one of them used this as a scavenger hunt for their students. I'll try to get into that later. The different posts, the ones which depended on physical location to be viewed, they would also have different loudnesses to them. So you could have one that's pretty small that can only be viewed within perhaps 10 feet or 3 meters. Otherwise, you could have ones that were visible within perhaps a mile or a few kilometers. And then each one would have variable loudness. And so if you could create permanent messages, you could create temporary ones that would expire after a certain amount of time. And then by default, the smaller the message, the longer it would last. And that was an attempt to combat spam. But it sort of makes sense, sort of the inverse. Time is associated with the inverse of the size of the message. Basically, you could sort of think of each message having a certain audience size. So, a bigger message that lasts shorter could be viewed by the same amount of people as a tiny message that lasts longer. And so there are different maps, much like with Reddit, where there are different subreddits that you can subscribe to, and then you have a single homepage with all information from all the subreddits you subscribe to. With MapBuddy, you could subscribe to the different maps that you care about, and then you would view a composite version of that map as your home screen. So for example, maybe you care about food truck locations, and you also care about garage sales. You could then subscribe to both of those, and then your home screen would show you food trucks and garage sales around you. And again, this application was available on the Google Play Store. It's still available on the Apple iOS store as well, currently in both stores. And then the whole thing was built also as a PWA, a progressive web app. And what that means is both on Android and iOS, you can install it to your home screen without necessarily having to go to the App Store. You would just visit a web page. The application itself is also embeddable in websites. And so one of the customers of the application would then install it on their website via iframe, and then they would view their map, which could be updated. Additional information about markers could be clicked, etc. And that sort of corner of the product makes it equivalent to a feature of Google Maps called My Maps. All right, so that's it with the tutorial. Let's go ahead and look through some of the screens. So here's the home screen. This is all the maps that I am subscribed to. And as you can see, there's a lot of information going on here. And so in order to keep things interesting and to solve the chicken and egg problem, what I did is I found a lot of data sources, and then I would constantly update different maps with that information. So for example, one of the maps contains information about earthquakes. One of the maps contains information about car break-ins, for example. And then depending on where your physical geolocation is at the point in time in which you create an account and sign up for the application, you would then subscribe to default maps. So for example, the break-ins and earthquakes are defaults if you subscribe in San Francisco. And so here, this is my home screen. So you can see there's a lot of information. There's so much, in fact, that it ends up getting bubbled together. So I'm just going to zoom in. We can see a little more information here. And so here we see, a parking enforcement. I'm going to tap that so I can see information about a parking enforcement. And this is in the SF311 channel. I can see that it is a beacon, which means it's always visible. And then the expiration time, I don't remember what I have it set to. I think it expires perhaps in a month in order to keep things from getting too overwhelming. So if I scroll around a little further, here I see information. This is from another map. This is where I had marked a location of a poop bag for dogs. And this is available in the dog amenities channel. So for example, if you go to Google Maps, you cannot find where these dog run parks are, where these dog poop bags are. These are conveniences, oftentimes added by the community. Same with the little libraries. Like here's a little library, and here's another one. They are not available on Google Maps. There's even a channel for things like post office boxes. Here we go. Here's like a mailbox. It's in the wrong channel, but you sort of get the idea. Like you cannot go to Google Maps and get a list of mailboxes. In fact, if you go to the USPS website, you will get an outdated list of mailboxes. And so some of this information I need to gain by physically walking around and tracking information in here. So I'm going to go to the settings for the map. So one thing you can do is you can set the amount of range of time. So currently it's showing information for all time, but I can also view, okay, what's been added in the past week. Okay, so I can see this information here. If I go to the past day, I will probably see nothing. Okay, and that is because there's a recurring job which adds information. Oh, actually, we do have some data. Okay. So I believe perhaps it is set to run nightly. It pulls in additional data. Of course, once you go downtown, there's a lot more accidents happening. So this is the home page. This is a composite view of all of my maps. Some of these information up here, of course, you tap the screen, they dismiss them. You tap one, you get information. Metadata is often added to posts. And so, for example, here I can tap that and get driving directions. It'll open up Google Maps. Other types of posts have different metadata. And then with the customers of the application, they would then purchase additional metadata. So for example, the ability to check into a location, the ability to open a certain website, things like that. Ability to open a calendar of events. So now let's go to the second tab. This is the map search. So I can go up here. I can search for something I want. So here's the food trucks map. There's also a list of, this is how I view my subscribed maps. Of course, being the developer, I'm subscribed to all the maps. And then suggested maps. This is based on my current geolocation. And then so one of the abilities for the application to make money is then to sort of sell different slots. And so I could, for example, say, hey, if you create your map for your business, I can set it up so that anybody who's like located in San Francisco, for example, will see your map. Or anybody who's located in the tourist region of San Francisco, for example, the Embarcadero, will see a map for tourists. Another goal of this application was to replace the need for physical tourist maps. So for example, one of these maps is, let's see if I can find it. Search for the word pier. Here we go. SF Pier 39. And so this map here, this is a map which is intended to replace the physical tourist maps. This was created before I added emoji icon support. And so here we see, that's why they're all just black circles. And then this information was taken from a tourist map. And then if you're ever walking around in San Francisco and you happen to be near Pier 39, you would then have that map recommended to you. So that's one of the uses. Another one is, okay, coffee shops. This was intended to be a curated list of coffee shops. Actually, there's a hidden map with the better. Oh, here we go. So here's like a map. Here's an example of like a influencer could make their own map and then share it with others. And so, for example, with Google Maps, I do have my own custom maps, but to share them with others is very difficult. The whole Google Map concept of sharing maps is very messy. It does exist. It's real hard to find. But here it's a much better and core feature of MapBuddy to build and share maps than you can ever get with Google Maps. So here, for example, with Andy Town, I could open up the Instagram page, I could open the website, get driving directions. Now, another use case is one of my paying customers, previously paying customers. The company for this has shut down, but this was the Midland MTSS partners. And so notice that with this map, when I opened it, actually the same thing happened with the Pier 39 map, is that this map also has what is considered an anchor point. And that is sort of this, what is the center and bounding box of all the important stuff for the map. So when you go to the map, if you have an anchor set up, it'll take you to that location in that zoom point. And so this map here is of a city in Michigan. However, I am physically located in San Francisco. And so if I were to go to one of these maps without an anchor point and it's far away, I wouldn't see anything. And as a user, I would get frustrated. And so this is able to fix it. So I can zoom in. I can scroll over here, but once I tap that anchor, it's going to zoom me back out to the center point for the map. And so this customer, they would have a lot of information. Here you can see all the metadata, website, the Twitter account, formerly known as Twitter, the Instagram page, Facebook, send an email, make a phone call, and get driving directions. And then the amount of information they have here, they also have the scrolling support. Most messages have a message limit. However, with these, they're able to have a scrollable description. And then this map was embedded on the customer's website. And that was the primary way it was consumed. The most interesting use case member was this Great Lake Bay Region Alliance customer. And they had something called the STEM pipeline, Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics. And as you can see, there are 117 members. These are real members. Perhaps 20 of them were, up to 20 were bots or test accounts of that I'd created, but there is at least about 100 real users in this channel. And so the way this worked is students would travel and hang out at one of these locations. You could think something like the Exploratorium in San Francisco, or things like planetariums, museums, etc. These are the types of things that the students would use. So the way it works is a student first the student would install the application. They would then use it to get a list of their maps. And then they would then physically travel to the locations, interact, and then check in. So for example, here in Bay City, there are 4 locations. And so a student could then come and visit, tap it, and then they could check in to the location. So I'm going to tap the check in. By checking into this post, you agree to share your current location email address with the moderators of the map and agree to their privacy policy. And so here's the interesting thing, is if I am not physically at this location and I attempt to check in, I'm getting an error. That makes sense. I physically am located in San Francisco. How on earth could I check into that location? And so for that reason, I'm getting this warning. Let's see. All right, so now I'm going to attempt to sort of lie about the physical location in the browser and see if I can get this to work. All right, let's see if this works. Okay, so now I've lied and I've told it that I'm located in Michigan. So it put me directly, actually, the coordinate that I've posted as my current location is literally the exact same coordinate of this nature area. So I'm going to tap that. I'm going to go to check-in, and I'm going to hit check-in. This time the check-in succeeded. And so as I would physically move around in the world, I would then be able to check in. And so that's how they created their sort of scavenger hunt where you have to physically visit and then check in. But these locations, these are the beacon type, so you can find them on the map and know where to go and find them. But sort of the other concept of the scavenger hunt is that you wouldn't see the locations, but you would perhaps see like a sort of starting marker, and then you would click it for more information, and it would say, go 1 block north to the blue coffee shop or something, and then you'd walk there, and then a new hidden location would appear, and then you could get further instructions from that, and then eventually find some sort of prize. All right, so what else do we have? There's also a global channel, which everyone is subscribed to by default. That's just sort of a dumping ground for information. Car break-ins. This was a sort of a subset of the crime information, and this was attempted to sort of make the app go like, quote, viral. This would be a URL. Oh yeah, every single one of these maps has a URL associated with it. And so then the URL for this page I could then just share on like a social media site. In fact, I can sort of show you what the URL looks like now. As I scroll around and as I zoom in and zoom out and I change the map that I'm looking at, it changes the information that will be available in the URL. So here in the side menu, I'm the administrator, so I get some options. I can set the origin, clear it. But here I can either share a map, which is a link just to the SF car break-ins map, or I can share a map to share a link to the map, but with a current viewport. And then I can even generate HTML code, which I can paste into a website. And so by doing that, somebody could then create a map, for example, of this spot here, and then embed it in their website. Another use case would be maps that, for example, I could share with my wife, and then we could keep track of, where's the daycare? Where did we park our car? What was our favorite date night? Etc. Another use case would be hiking spots. What are the best hiking spots? Here's a fun one. And so the purpose of this map is for a house that is for sale. And so here, this was an actual house that I stopped at and looked at actually probably a couple years ago. And so I wanted to keep track of, so say that I am a realtor and I want to share information about this listing. I want to tell potential buyers, where's the local middle school? Where's the elementary school, the high school, the farmer's market, the music shop? Where do the hipsters hang out? Where's the stores? And so then here, this is a URL that a realtor can generate for their listing, which they could then put a QR code up, for example, and then potential customers could scan it, and then they would understand where all this stuff is located around them. And again, these have anchor points as well. Other ideas. Where's the best beer? Where's the tiki bars? Bird watching. What birds did I see at what locations? Wi-Fi. What are the Wi-Fi passwords? And then they would be associated with, for example, this restaurant has this Wi-Fi password. SF the East Cut. This was I spent, might have been 6 hours, and I believe I walked 11 miles all around this neighborhood in San Francisco, putting up little flyers with QR codes linking to this East Cut. And then if somebody were to physically walk around and then find a location, they could then check into it. And so this has the messages which depend on physical location, and then they have the ability to check in. And then so I was going to give somebody $100 in cash if they checked in the most locations. That said, nobody checked in. I can't remember the last time I paid attention to a QR code on a flagpole. So it was a very time-consuming failure of an idea. But that was one of the marketing ideas that I had attempted. Garage sales. That's another one. You could then create posts, which would then be available for like a week. Earthquakes. This is updated automatically with data from the USGS. So here we can see a lot of earthquakes happening. Then we can go into filter and we can say, okay, I only want items from the past month. This will reduce it pretty heavily. Now I was going to then further add abilities to filter even more. Sort of figuring out how to do that in a way that would universally work across all maps would be tricky. But for example, with the earthquakes, I would only perhaps want to see earthquakes with a magnitude of at least perhaps 4. Like nobody cares about a magnitude 2 earthquake. But again, this data is constantly updated automatically to solve that chicken and egg problem. Let's see, any other interesting use cases? Oh yeah, SF outside lands. So this was based on the 2021. So another idea was for large outdoor venues, for example, even like Burning Man or big sort of festivals. It would be an ability to create maps and then say where bathrooms are, where the stages, where you can get the food, the beer, bathrooms, that type of stuff. And so such a map would have a lifetime of, only be useful for a few days. It's something you would forget about a year later. But in order for this use case to solve that, I needed the ability to add sort of polygons. So for example, shapes that denote where the walls are or where the parking is. And so for that reason, it wasn't quite a good fit for outside lands. And as part of attempting to find customers, I did reach out to a lot of these companies. I also reached out to conglomerates of vineyards. They would do, here's 5 vineyards that are friends or 20 vineyards. They have buses that go between them. I reached out to some of those locations to attempt to do this. Bar crawls. I had a few ideas I was trying to do. SF COVID. This is created back when there were only certain locations to get vaccines at. And so this was another bit of timely information. This data was pulled from a third-party service as well. It's no longer applicable, of course. Those are the main sort of use cases. And so, that's sort of information about how to read from the maps, how to view the maps, but how do we actually create stuff? So here, let's pretend that I'm hanging out by the highway. I can go here and I can create a post. And so this is similar to, the Reddit screen where you create a post. I can change the radius, or I can make it a beacon that's always visible. Each map has their own permissions to configure what are the acceptable loudness, if you can do a beacon or not. Default icons, constraints on where in the world messages can be physically located, etc. So here I'm going to make a post. I can also, if I wanted to, I can search for location. I can search for, I can tap one of these locations. This uses Google Map API. That way, if I want to post something that's not on my exact physical location where I'm exactly standing, it can then be associated with like a restaurant. But for this post, I'm just going to post it here where it believes I'm standing. I can then choose a map for that. So for example, maybe I found a mini library and I'm standing on top of it. If I wanted to, I could change the icon, but I'm not going to. Actually, I might have just cleared it out. Here's a new mini library. All right, so I'm going to make this a beacon. It's going to last for 1 year. Actually, I'll make it permanent. It's never going to go away. I can mark it as not safe for work or safe for work. I can enable replies or disable replies. I'll leave them enabled. Actually, I'll set it to NSFW. Adults only. Okay, I'm going to publish to the map. And here's the post. Once I tap it, it takes me to the post itself. So this is a screen dedicated to the post. Again, this is a URL as well, and I can share this with folks. Now let's see. If I go to the mini library, I do not currently see it. I believe that's because I'm not enabled to see not safe for work posts. So I'm going to go to my config. I'm going to enable not safe for work posts. And then I'm going to go back to the map. Let's see, I'm subscribed to the map, so it's on my home page. So now I see it in my home page. So I'm going to click it. And this shows me the post. So this is like a convenient way to quickly see all the posts on this view, on the map view. However, I can also click into the message to go to it. Once I'm on this screen, I can then do things with it. So for example, since I created the post, I can delete it. Anytime I create a post automatically it becomes a favorite, so I can find it easily later. I can also reply to it. Other folks can reply, of course. Unlike Reddit, it is not a threaded or a hierarchical conversation. It is just a flat list of replies. I can share it. I can delete my message. I can delete the post entirely. Once I do that, it takes me back. This is my list of favorite posts. And by the way, you can see what screen you're on by which one is highlighted on the bottom of the screen. So I'll make another post again in the global chat. Post to map, here it is. And then so if I go down here and I select my favorite posts, it will show them based on the order in which they had been favorited. And so the top one here is that ASDF one. I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Gonna have a baby. So this is when we had a baby and then the location that it happened. I'm going to go back to the settings. I'm going to enable post radius circles. And I'm going to go back to the map. And so there currently aren't any here. However, if I create a new post, this is going to be a talk loudness for 1 month. This is the radius. I'll just post it here. And then now once I'm on the map, I do see a circle around it. This is interesting for both debugging, but also when you walk around and you see messages come and go. The circles really help you know which ones are associated with a small location. And then sort of the feeling is that when you discover one of these, it should be exciting because it's like somebody left a message for you. You could think of it as a message in a bottle or even a form of digital graffiti in some cases. Back here in the settings, you can block users. This is required for the App Store. You can view your own profile. It's just a photo pulled in from Gravatar. Really nothing interesting. It's mostly just to block the user. Of course, you can log out permanently, delete account. It'll just immediately delete anything you've ever created. And that's to make sure that we're not violating any, oh gosh, not HIPAA, but the privacy laws in Europe and California and stuff like that. You can go back in the tutorial. There's terms of service, privacy policy. And in this case, it's not installed. It's like not a real app. It's a web app. And then so tapping that, it'll take the user to the Play Store to install it. And this is because I'm currently emulating an Android device. If I were emulating a iOS device, it would then take the user to the iOS store. Other features are that if you are not logged in, you can create an account. The create an account flow is pretty smooth. It uses the Apple sign-in or the Google sign-in, whichever is appropriate for the platform. There's also it'll send an email, a little code that you copy and paste, or a link you click that'll open in the app to log you in. And so yeah, the application, that is mostly it. I don't think I've missed any features. As you can tell, it relies heavily on Google Maps in their APIs. Perhaps OpenStreetMaps would have been better. Posts have emojis associated with them, etc. And so, yeah, this application, it had perhaps 150 real users. It had 2 paying customers, and it made I forget, perhaps $1,500 ARR between the two customers. Other things that contains is it has a complete API available to it, and so users can programmatically create entries, find entries, favorite entries. Essentially, any interaction with the application is also available through a documented API. The application, it ended up, as you can see, it ended up being quite feature rich. I really built a lot of stuff, a lot of functionality into this. Let's see. Yeah, it was a bit too featureful. Ultimately, I believe it failed because it's hard to describe what it does. I can say, okay, it's Reddit for geolocations. That sort of clicks, but sort of, as you watch this video and I went through and I described all these use cases, it's basically the application did too much stuff. It was too powerful, too complex, and I believe those are the reasons that it didn't necessarily take off as a product. That said, if even just one of these maps were to take off, for example, the car break-ins, there was the poop maps of San Francisco that took off several years ago. And so I believe to have a single map that could perhaps get really popular, that might be a way to help this take off. Or even a sales team. So for example, calling all these different realtors and sort of hooking them up with this stuff, getting maps built out. That could have increased customer as well, usage as well. But again, yeah, it just unfortunately did not reach product market fit. So create account, sign in with Google. I'm not sure if this is currently, I don't know if this works in the emulator environment. Oh yeah, so I believe on an actual Android device, you get a small pop-up. Yeah, there's something wrong with this test scenario. But yeah, otherwise I can do the regular auth. Whoops. I clicked something. 100%. There we go. So I received an email. I'm just going to copy the code, paste it in here. All good. Cool. All right. Yeah, so that's the application. Currently, it is alive and running. It's available at mapbuddy.app. It was previously called Radar Chat. I had a company that I created and then later shut down for this application. And so it is just something that runs on my servers. Cost me about $40 a month just to sit there. The future of this is unknown. I might see if I can sort of rekindle the excitement for it. I believe as you listen to this, it sort of sounds interesting. Most people sort of hear it and say, oh, that's a great idea. It probably just needs the right team to love it and get it going. And so either it'll run there for a while, I'll try to sell it, or I'll just kill it entirely and then release all the source code to the public. So we'll see sort of what happens. So if you're interested in this, you can reach out to me. I'm Thomas Hunter. My email address is, you might have saw it on the screen earlier, but it is tlhunter@gmail.com. So if you find this interesting, just reach out. So that's the product overview. I may do a separate technical overview where I sort of look through some of the repository code, some of the backend services and whatnot. But I'm not. Some of the things that this does is actually pretty technically interesting to keep it efficient, to be able to query all this data very quickly. And so I believe that's definitely worth a different presentation as well. All right, thank you for watching. And again, I was Thomas Hunter, and this is Map Buddy.